This is Revelations.Unveiled. Detroit. Dwayne Wade and the Transgender Travesty, a detransitioner's story. The conclusion. Fitz still wants to sue the surgeon who removed his testicles, but does not know if that is possible. I would like to sue WPATH for their convoluted, misleading, and negligent standards of care. I like to sue the Endocrine Society for being complicit. I like to sue the California Medical Board. I like to join a class action lawsuit. I don't know how these things can happen, he said. Other attorneys with whom he has explored this seem interested, but act often cagey and only call him when they want to speak with him, but never reply to his emails when he wants to communicate with them. The other side has decades on us in terms of setting up laws in their favor. So it's very tricky, he said. It all sounds so crazy, but that's because it is crazy. When you start to look at it underneath a microscope, it's really eugenics, a messed up situation. Fitz believes that the transgender movement shares significant overlap with the transhumanist movement, specifically the notion that your body is just a machine you take apart and put back together. In addition to taking part in lawsuits, he wants to organize detransitioners and is interacting with groups and individuals that have gone public with their detransition stories. The Journal contacted the Endocrine Society to ask whether the organization was backing any research on or offering any support to detransitioners and how their guidelines are adhered to in clinical practice, and if they take a position on the promotion of surgery as the best option in light of how it was marketed to Fritz. No one was available to speak, and we were referred to their guidelines. Dealing with regret, fighting for hope. I wish I would have been taught to accept myself. A lot of this transgender ideology is weird. It's an inside-out head game of discovering your true self. But it really ends up destroying yourself, he said, when asked what would have helped him not go down this route in the first place. I wish I had learned there was nothing wrong with being an effeminate boy, that it didn't make me a woman, he said, adding that same-sex attraction itself is not harmful and that medical and surgical interventions are not the solution to psychosocial problems or mental illness. When he sees opposition to transgender medicine, he often encounters outrage about the pathway to sterilization that the combination of chemical puberty suppression, and cross-sex hormones create in gender non-conforming youth. While that is a legitimate issue, Fitz implores people not to forget the myriad of medical harms that result from the gruesome surgeries that are not discussed as often. I have scars on my genitals now. I am missing some of my genitals now. I have phantom pain. I have a chemical dependence on a regulated drug made by a private corporation, Fitz said. I feel like I'm pretty much fucked. I wish that I could just go buy some land and farm and leave the world behind, but I can't. Because of all this, it's such an unnecessary mess. It didn't get me anywhere. If you're not satisfied with the result of these treatments and surgeries, the medical community will abandon you, he said. And nobody will know what to do with you because they refuse to research us and they refuse to publish information on what our needs are, he said, of detransitioning people. What compounded this confusion for so long was the atmosphere of the city, with gay rainbow and trans pink and blue striped flags flying everywhere as people saunter around in the streets supporting they them pronoun buttons. Fitz believes he looks a little better after having had the mastectomy, though he still experiences numbness in his chest from the operation. I've been told I can get testicle implants that look even better, but that wouldn't affect how I feel or function. I still have the phantom pain because they need the nerves to be communicating with the organ that is missing. I still have the sexual disruptions and dependence on pharmaceuticals, he said. His attorney had to work extra hard to get his sex markers changed back to the original on his legal documents. Detransitioning his identification papers has presented more hurdles than switching them to the opposite sex markers. I actually had a legal battle to restore my birth certificate. Some of the other documents were tricky at some points too, Fritz said. I'm willing to talk to anyone who seriously seems interested in caring. I've talked to several journalists. Most of them don't end up publishing. I never know why. He concluded, I hope for a medical breakthrough to restore my wrongful amputation, to help me look and feel whole again, and to put pharmaceuticals behind me. I write to researchers working to bioprint regenerated testes in the lab to let me know people like me exist, and I donate to their efforts. I write to surgeons performing penile transplants to ask that they explore testicle transplants, and I meditate on restoration by means beyond science, including miracles. The end. So family, we see there are a lot of questionable avenues as it pertains to this particular issue of transgenderism. Men identifying as women, women identifying as men, various surgeries and procedures, various medicines and pharmaceuticals, controlled substances being administered, the necessity for mental and psychological therapies. So family, we're actually dealing with a spirit beyond sexual. The autism spectrum was outlined and introduced as it was indicated as a contributing factor to gender dysphoria, which is the mental issue, the mental condition or disorder that besets the majority of people who identify as transgender. The feeling that you are assigned the wrong body, the feeling associated with homosexuality or homosexual tendencies, or the emasculation of young boys, the effeminization of young boys, the effeminate ways of young boys, the images presented in societies, the crafting of the foods and the water, a lot of contributing factors into this satanic gumbo that is the overriding agenda in our society. and we see the hardcore participation, the gung-ho spirit of these medical practitioners who we found out the primary contact was in the deceptive practice of posing. This man thought he, through these courses of these appointments, of evaluation, of conversation, of some degree of therapy, he thought he was speaking to a man who was actually a female posing. That is deceit. That is deception. That is wickedness. So family, as spiritual soldiers, we raise our swords to the battle. Now, we do not condemn someone dealing with a mental issue or disorder, but we do not condone it. We do not condone the participation of these seasoned medical practitioners, these doctors, these surgeons, the legal analysts, the professionals, the therapists. We do not condone the participation in the ruination of humanity, the mutilation, the dissection, the amputation of body parts to satisfy a mental issue. It is widespreading, family. We bring attention to the scenario of Brother Wade and his son and some of the decisions that are being made by this family in the public forum to be dissected and digested and reviewed and evaluated so that we may determine the best course of action for our people, our children, our community. And this is not the avenue by which we will receive any righteousness, no approval given, no allowance given, no acceptance given to this practice that is a detriment to the multiplication of the nation, the destruction of one's body part, the spray painting, the cutting, the burning, the tearing up of the spiritual masterpiece, that which is your body given to us by the Holy Creator. You do not mark up a masterpiece of perfection. So family, our soldiers of the spirit, of truth and righteousness and light, we must begin to speak against the mental disorder of the dysphoria, the off switch that contributes to it of the autism spectrum, the mental illness or the conditions, the environment in which these subjects grow up that compromises their roles in society, that brings about this increasing and acceleration of sexuality into people who are not even adolescents, who are prepubescent, who do not have the mental faculty and fortitude to make a decision or determination as to the course of action of their physical appearance. We must become a vocal, vigilant front for the protection and the values and the morality of a community of righteousness. This cannot be allowed. This shall not be maintained or manifested within the mentalities of those who practice in common sense, critical thought and thinking, expressive, earnest evaluation. We must discern these devices of deception that try to bring darkness upon us as we continue to strive out of the darkness of the ignorance, especially us who have been bound up in this carnal captivity on this continent of confusion. We will continue to explore and bring light to the darkness of this wickedness, of the satanic practice, of this transgender proliferation throughout our public society. We will fight this. We go into battle with no fear. If we fall in death, we fall for a purpose, on the stance of the protection, of the value, of the love and sincere truth of the nation. So family, we shall reconvene. We shall be stern and steady, austere and in action until we are together again. This was an article in regards to the Dwayne Wade transgender travesty. The Dwayne Wade transgender travesty. The story of a detransitioner. The perils and the pitfalls of the so-called transgender movement and proliferation. So, I love you. I love you. I love you. Until we are together again. This is Revelations.Unveiled. Detroit.